Well, at least 57 people have died attempting to cross the border from Morocco to a small Spanish territory in North Africa. The Spanish government says many of the 60,000 people who crossed into Ceuta have voluntarily returned to Morocco. Now, some migrants swam several kilometers through the sea and faced down authorities who tried to turn them back with water cannons, tear gas, and warning shots. The mass crossing is causing division and shock in Europe. The Spanish Prime Minister condemned the border breach, blaming human smugglers for the crisis. And for more, we're joined by Renata Brito in Barcelona. She covers global migration for the Associated Press. Renata, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let me ask you, what do you know about the situation on the ground in Ceuta today?
Well, this was the biggest border crisis the Spanish territory has seen, and it's seen a few before. We know that between 50 and 60,000 migrants crossed into this very small Spanish territory in North Africa that has only a population of 84,000. So that's approximately 70% of its population. But we also know that a lot of people who entered have already returned voluntarily to Morocco after seeing that, the chaos that had become Ceuta. There was really nowhere for them to go. The migrant reception centers have been overwhelmed for a few days, if not weeks. People were left stranded in the streets, roaming in the streets. And so many returned to Morocco. However, at least 57 people died in this crossing attempt in the last day. People drowned, but people were also stampeded, squished, collapsed in the crowds that were trying to cross from Morocco.
What have you been learning, or what is being said about why so many all at once tried to make this crossing all together?
It's still not 100% clear the reason behind it, but the Spanish government has blamed it on smuggling groups, criminal gangs who misconstrued a Supreme Court ruling earlier this month in Spain's Supreme Court that said that migrants who cross by sea, who swim, cannot be immediately pushed back, cannot be immediately deported. They have to go through a certain due process. Unlike those who cross the land border by climbing the fence, for example. And so the Spanish government has really pinned that on the reason behind so many people trying to cross into Ceuta at once. There was also a lot of misinformation spread on social media in Morocco, saying that the border was open and using the Supreme Court ruling as, a reason to go to Ceuta swimming. But of course, we've already seen most of those people go back to Morocco. Spain said it had struck a deal with Morocco to return those who entered as soon as possible. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people died in this attempt.
So the understanding is that, as you say, most, probably not all, have returned at this point. Can you explain to us, what would the aim be, given the very small population and what's actually available in Ceuta? What would the end goal have been for those who were trying to get across?
Well, the goal is always to reach the European Union, to look for better job opportunities, but also for people fleeing violence. There are migrants from other countries in Morocco who use Morocco as a transit country. And Ceuta, too, is a stepping stone to Europe. However, it's not that easy to go from Ceuta to mainland Spain. Most migrants are eventually deported, sent back. Some may apply for asylum. And unaccompanied minors may also stay a bit longer or manage to get documents and be maybe transferred to mainland Spain. But it's not that easy. So many migrants go to Ceuta or Melilla thinking, it's a European Union territory. But there are, and there have always been, border checks for people leaving Ceuta to mainland Spain and for the rest of Europe. So it's not that easy. And again, the Spanish government has blamed people smugglers and social media misinformation for this mass of people who tried to enter Spain through Ceuta.
And as you say, I mean, 57 people dying. It's not that easy to get to Ceuta from by sea, which is what they were trying to do in this case. It's I was reading a 2-hour swim potentially for some, and not all survived it. What's the government of Spain doing moving forward to prevent this from happening?
So yeah, it could be 2 hours, it could be more hours. We had many people, men, women, families with children, tell journalists that they were hours in the sea trying to reach Ceuta. The Spanish government has said that it has since installed some floating barriers, as this seems to be the main reasoning behind the Supreme Court ruling, which basically said that people who are crossing by sea don't actually cross over any physical barriers. And so they have to go through a different process in order to be returned. So the Spanish government has said, okay, we're going to put some physical barriers on the ocean, in the sea, and they're using that as one of the solutions. They've also sent the military, they've sent more ships, more police officers to patrol both the land and sea at Ceuta border with Morocco.
As I said off the top, you're in Barcelona. What are you hearing from people there?
The first things we heard was that it was absolute chaos and things had completely spun out of control. I had been in Ceuta in 2021 in the previous border crisis where roughly 10,000 people crossed in 2 days, but we were hearing that this was much, much worse. It had been building up in the past week with hundreds of people swimming to Ceuta, collapsing reception centers, overwhelming local authorities and NGO workers. But Thursday, it really exploded with tens of thousands crossing at once, and it continued into Friday. On Friday afternoon, we started seeing people return, and with the increased police presence, we also saw on the Moroccan side of the border, Moroccan forces using tear gas, water cannons to disperse the crowds that were still trying to come to Ceuta and were gathering on the hilltop. So there's definitely a lot of increased security. And the Spanish Prime Minister visited today, and we'll see how things evolve tomorrow. But as I said at the beginning, the majority of the migrants who had crossed into Ceuta had already returned by this evening.
Associated Press reporter Renata Brito in Barcelona. Renata, thank you.